At first, I didn't understand anything about Cubism, and now I still don't. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm going to explain the topic to you. So, I hope that you like this video. This movement is not my favorite, but I will explain it to you. So, enjoy, I hope. First, we have to talk about its definition because we have to know what it is Cubism. So, Cubism is an avant-garde movement from the early 20th centuries, characterized by the predominant use of geometric figures such as rectangles, triangles, circles, cubes. Okay, but what about the objective? What is it? The main objective is to break with the naturalistic representation and also capture multiple planes on the surface of a painting. Okay, I need to give you an example of this. If we want to capture multiple planes, we can use a cube as an example. Okay, to look at the cube, only one point of view is needed. So, to understand this idea, it's like this dismantling the cardboard box and leaving it completely open on a flat surface, showing everything at once. Everything. I hope this makes sense. Really. Also, it is important to talk about a little bit of history. So I'm going to explain some facts that are related to this topic. Conventional wisdom holds that Cubism began in 1907 when Pablo Picasso first presented his painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, that in English means the young ladies of Avignon. In this initial attempt, Picasso incorporated influences from primitive African art and post-impressionism, particularly from the French painter Paul Cézanne. In addition to drawing inspiration from the forms of exotic art, Cubism attempted to represent the fourth dimension through hyperpolyhedra, whose ideas of space-time were inspired by Albert Einstein's theory of relativity from 1905. Maybe the last term that I used, hyperpolyhedra, is a little bit new for you. So this is a connected and closed figure, as I explained it in the example of the box. I would like to add the main characteristic that I consider the most important. So I decided to divide them in 6 points that for me are the most important points that I have to show you. So the first one is the analytical vision of representation elements. The second one is the linear perspective and spatial depth. The third, use of geometric figures as cubes, cylinders, etc. 4. Incorporation of multiple angles in the same plane. 5. Preference for straight lines. And 6. Application of mixing techniques as collage, typography, etc. These characteristics led Cubism to be considered a more rational and analytical form of movement than others, because others movements were more like inspired by subjectivity and like emotions and that stuff. We have some phases of Cubism. We have 3. The first one is Cubism, the second one is Analytical Cubism, and the last one is Synthetic Cubism. The first one is from 1907 to 1909 and is considered as the first phase of Cubism, also known as Proto-Cubism. It was characterized by the influence of the work of the visual artist Paul Cézanne. The second phase is Analytical Cubism from 1909 to 1912, and this is also known as Hermetic Cubism and identified by the decomposition of forms and geometric figures to reorder them in a different way, in successive and superimposed planes. And we have the last one, that is Synthetic Cubism. This was created in 1911 and it was characterized by the use of colors and shapes that allow the most significant part of the figure to stand out. The painters of this phase sought to capture recognizable figures. They used the technique of collage, which allowed real objects to be fixed on the canvas in search of new visual sensations. I'm going to put some examples of the three phases, so you can compare these three phases at the same time. The main exponents and their most representative works of the movements, it was Pablo Picasso, also George Braque, Juan Gris, and Jan Metzinger. I would like to mention a little bit of their lives as artists, but without making this so boring. So I'm going to be fast with their biographies. So here we go. Pablo Picasso was a Spanish painter, sculptor, and printmaker who is widely considered one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. He was born in Malaga, Spain in 1881 and showed a great talent for art at a young age. He moved to Paris in 1900 and became a leading figure in the development of Cubism. Throughout his career, Picasso produced an enormous body of work that included paintings, sculpture, prints, and ceramics, and he continued to experiment with new styles and techniques until his death in 1973. His works are held in major museums and provide collections around the world. George Braque was a French painter and sculptor who is best known from co-founding the Cubist movement alongside Pablo Picasso. He was born in 1882 in Argenteuil, France, and began his artistic training at the École des Beaux-Arts in Le Havre. In 1907, he met Picasso, and together they began experimenting with new techniques that would eventually lead to the development of Cubism. Braque's works from his period are characterized by fragmented forms, multiple viewpoints, and muted color palette. He continued to work in the Cubist style throughout his career, but also experimented with other styles, including Fauvism and Surrealism. In addition to painting, Braque also worked in sculpture and printmaking. He died in 1963 at the age of 81. Juan Gris was a Spanish painter and sculptor. He was born in Madrid in 1887 and moved to Paris in 1906, where he became friends with artists such as Braque and Picasso. Gris began to develop his own distinctive style of Cubism, which was characterized by the use of simplified forms and bright colors. His works often featured still life compositions that were arranged in a way that created a sense of depth and space. Gris continued to work in this style until his death in 1927 at the age of 40. Jean Mensinger was a French painter. He was born in Nantes in 1883 and began studying art in Paris in the early 1900s. Mensinger became associated with the Cubist movement in 1908. He was known for his use of geometric shapes and his exploration of the concept of simultaneity, in which multiple viewpoints are combined in a single image. Mensinger also collaborated with other Cubist artists, including Braque and Picasso, and was a key participant in the development of the movement. He continued to work in the Cubist style throughout his career, but also experimented with other styles, including Orphism. He died in 1956. All of them left behind a rich legacy of innovative and influential artwork. And the last point that we're going to see here, the last important point, because the last point is my opinion, so my opinion is not that important, but okay. So the last point, the last important point, yeah. We have some areas of art influenced by Cubism, so I would like to mention in general and giving one example of them. So the first one is painting. Cubism is mainly known for its impact of painting. Cubism artists such as Pablo Picasso and George Braque broke with the tradition of perspective and realistic representation of the world, and created works in which objects are represented from multiple viewpoints simultaneously, as I said in the beginning. So, one example of this is the example that I said is from Pablo Picasso. Le Demoiselles d'Avignon is perhaps one of the most famous works of Cubism. The painting depicts 5 nude ladies in a geometric and abstract style, with their bodies divided into planes and angular shapes. Also, we have the sculpture. Cubism also influences sculpture, where artists explore the representation of the human figure and other objects in terms of geometric forms and planes. As an example of a sculpture, we have Head of a Woman, by Pablo Picasso. It's an example of Cubist exploration of the human figure in sculpture. The head is composed of basic geometric shapes such as circles, triangles, and squares, instead of a realistic representation of the human form. Okay, another area is the architecture. Cubism also had an influence on architecture, particularly in the creation of modern and functional buildings. Cubism architects were inspired by the geometric forms and the representation of multiple perspectives in painting and sculpture. As an example of this is the Louis Vuitton Foundation building in Paris, designed by Frank Gehry. It's an example of how Cubism influenced modern architecture. The building features a series of geometric shapes and angular planes that create a sculptural and dynamic structure. Okay, wow. Not only that, design also had an influence by Cubism. So, especially in the design of everyday objects such as tableware, furniture, and textiles. Cubist designers used geometric forms and abstract patterns to create objects with a modern and functional style. As an example of this, we have Marshall Brewer's Wassily chair. Is an example of how Cubism influenced furniture design. The chair used chrome steel tubes and simple geometric shapes to create a modern and functional piece that has become an icon of modern design. And the last one, that it is literature, that in my point of view is one of the most important and of these areas. Also paintings, but it's the second one because it is a really creative way to make literature. You're going to see why I'm saying this. Literature, literary Cubism was characterized by the combination of images and words known as a calligram. Uh, do you know what is a calligram? I mean, before this presentation, because I didn't. So the text was arranged to form a visual image representing the content of the writing words. Literary Cubism was also expressed through poems that were characterized by the absence of rhyme, meter, verse, or them. Nine writers influenced by Cubism were Guillaume Apollinaire, Jean Cousteau, Oswald de Andrade, and Enrico Verissimo. With this explanation, I realized that I don't like this movement. I mean, it is interesting how it develops in various areas and in history, but honestly, it doesn't catch my attention. But I learned a lot of information because before this presentation, I thought that the most important artist was Pablo Picasso, and only painting was part of Cubism. But now I realized that about others artists and their stories, and I'm done because there is a lot of information to analyze for you all. So I hope you like this different method to present a topic. I hope that you like it, and if you did, please tell the teacher that they give me a good score. And if you don't like this presentation, don't say nothing. Just that. So thank you for seeing my presentation, and yeah, bye.